Neville, I'm an alcoholic, yeah, I don't know what, I've done this a few times, and I was okay up until, I think, Friday. Someone said, aren't you sharing tonight? I said, no, Sunday, and then the obsession kicked in. But, I could only hope ever, that I can help at least just one person who is struggling today, because, I struggled for many, many years. I mean, I had no clue that this program was out there. I grew up in your average dysfunctional family. Mom was an alcoholic, dad was a workaholic, never wanted to be at home because of my mom. There was always arguments. And I remember just thinking I never fitted in. I didn't want to be there. I always thought that was, something was wrong with me. So of course I acted out, from a very, very young age. I mean, I remember, I don't know when I had my first sip, but I remember my mom used to be a Saturday, we'd be sitting around the pool and I'll be drinking, my mom would be drinking, and I'd go have an occasional sip of her booze. Didn't think anything of it, and then I remember I started smoking, I think it was 12 or something crazy like that. And, I had a guy across the road, he was also an addict, but him and something that he was doing suited me. He was also the rebel. He was always in trouble. He was sniffing petrol. He was doing this, and I was like, wow, okay, cool. I like what he's doing, and I easily fitted into his madness because, the two of us, we got along very well. Eventually, we were, I don't know, just two hooligans of the neighborhood. But life went on. I remember my dad, he got very sick. He landed up with a brain tumor, and they thought he was going to die. So we moved out of the one area in Joburg to an area closer to where my father's family was. I was about, 15, 16. I'd already been in a lot of trouble at schools. They discovered I was dyslexic and I was hyperactive. I had all of them, But, when you're hyperactive, it's suggested that you don't have a lot of sugar. Well, no one suggested that one to me, and I used to always get into trouble. I actually, I was thinking about it. I think maybe my first high ever was sugar. I remember knocking back 2 cans of cream soda once and going into class. And I lasted, I think, 15 minutes. And the rebel in me, the fight in me, which just kept on venturing. I remember getting kicked out of that school from that day, And that was without drugs and alcohol, That was just my head and sugar. And that was my journey, I was always getting into trouble, always getting kicked out of somewhere. But I remember we moved to this area, and I'd never really been drunk or, I'd done a little bit of naughty stuff. But I remember going to a party, and the guy said, no, you need to get your drinking license. And they made me drink 2 highball glasses, that's the full glass, of neat brandy. And I downed both of them. And I remember having the time of my life, nearly drowning in a swimming pool, just from diving into the shallow end, getting out. I had a bruise here, and then I remember being sick the whole evening, like violently ill. And I just said, no, I ate something bad, lying in this guy's garden somewhere, his parents looking at this going, is he okay? No, he's fine, and just sick. And going home the next day, telling my mom, no, I ate something bad. And I think I had alcohol poisoning. I stayed in bed almost the whole week, had in the fetal position, not being able to do anything. And you would think that would be it for me. That whole time, all I ever wanted to do was go out and drink again, And by the time it came to Friday, I was ready. And that was it. I would go out. I would drink to get drunk, but not just your tipsy little drunk, you know. If I could black out and vomit on you, it was a successful evening. And that was my story, you know. I eventually, you know, what this program has given me is like, and it's given me an opportunity to make amends to my mom, because my dad has passed away since then, and you know, I never had I lost all relationships with my family. I ended up moving out of home, I think I was about 18, and I actually moved from Joburg to Cape Town because Joburg was the problem. And you know, there was hope for me in Cape Town because I wouldn't be around those people. Little know that wherever I went with, and that was the problem. I remember talking to my mom the other day, and she said, remember when you had to leave Joburg because the police were looking for you? And I was like, oh, I had blacked that out. But yeah, I was in trouble all the time. I had to leave Joburg. I remember I did some dodgy stuff, and a friend of mine said, we got to get out of this town. And we left Joburg, went down to Cape Town, and I thought, there we go, you know, fresh start. You know, I landed up saying I can go live with my uncle, and you know, everything will be all right. I started drinking just like him because he happened to have been an alcoholic. And it suited me perfectly, you know. So my drinking took off. I landed up getting a little job somewhere in a hotel, and I thought, you know what, I'll just, you know, drink occasionally and I'll be okay. And within, I think, a month, I bumped into people also from my area I used to live in, and my whole addiction kicked off. But now I really had no supervision. You know, I had no roof over, I had no parents to worry about, and my addiction went haywire. You know, that was what must have been the late 90s. By 2000, I had moved out from my uncle's place, and you know, I was staying with a house full of people just like me, and life was a joy. I remember it being fun. You know, I'd party, you know, from Friday till Monday morning, try and make it to work, and you know, occasionally I would get a little drunk during the week, but everything was still manageable, you know. I did have a normal 9-to-5 job, as they would say, but that didn't last long because it really didn't suit my lifestyle. You know, I was the nighttime pubs, and you know, I was working in restaurants and trying to have a day job, and eventually I had to quit my day job because, I couldn't make it there in the morning. It was too early for me, and I just started working nighttime, and that went well. You know, I would work, drink, go home, sleep, wake up, and repeat. And you know, that all went well. But I suppose I didn't notice, but things slowly started falling apart. I mean, my relationship with my uncle fell apart. I started dating women that I thought would change me, you know, because I knew there was something. All I had to do was stop drinking so much and maybe not do so much drugs, and then I'll be okay. So I would get into relationships where with girls that will say, okay, cool, she's an upstanding member of society, she was at university, or she had a full-time job, and cool, I'll, you know, latch on to her, and I was like a leech, you know. That's exactly what I was. And I remember there's one girl madly in love with. I was running a bar. She started as a waitress on a holiday job. A few years later, her parents actually sent her away to England to get away from me, you know. And I was like, how can they do that? I mean, I'm such a nice guy, you know. And I honestly thought I was, you know. I cheated on this girl. I used behind her back. I did everything that a boyfriend shouldn't do, and I was claiming that it was true love, and my behavior was completely different. So that carried on. Eventually, a friend of mine said, why don't we go work on cruise ships? So I thought, there we go. That I'll be able to, stop all of this nonsense, because I think I'd been arrested, twice already, one for drunken driving, one for possession. And I thought, you know what, it's back to the same nonsense with me again. So if I go work on cruise ships, you can't use on them, you have to remain sober. I thought, there we go, that's how I'm going to sort my life out. And so I went. I landed up bumping into someone that I actually worked with in Cape Town, and first night I was blackout drunk, to the point of, I don't know where I was, woke up in the morning in a cabin. And, that kicked it off. As much as I thought I was a functional drunk, I was an addict. I was using every substance that I could put my hand on. I wasn't a picky drug addict. I didn't mind whatever you had, I'd use, and as much of it. And that's how I carried on. So I landed up, on the cruise liners, loving life. I landed up using in almost every port. I was drunk every night. I remember getting sick and landed up on medication. And most of the nursing staff on the cruise ships was South African. And she said to me, I cannot drink on this medication. I could have a heart attack and die. And my justification was, don't worry, I've got this. And I did drink on it. And it just shows I didn't care. I thought I was caring, but I was a mess. And eventually I lost that job due to being drunk on duty. And I landed up back in Cape Town. And I thought, you know what, I've learned my lesson now. And so I'll change my life. I kept on, like I started working in a place where I knew I could just have a few drinks after work, and I thought that would be good. And I worked really hard at that. I mean, wherever I went, I worked really hard, and I built myself up. I became managers. I was always, I put a lot of effort into, my work. But I suppose that was just so I could use more, because I put a lot of effort into being an alcoholic. Life went on. Eventually, I started getting fired more and more. And I remember getting fired once and going around looking for a job. And I remember this lady saying, you know what, Neville, you're a nice guy and everything, but we can't hire you because you're too wild. And I'm like, what are they talking about? I only drank a little bit after work. And it was honestly in my head, that's what I was like. I didn't see, the madness that I was really doing. I just thought everybody was, I honestly thought I was a functioning alcoholic and I was okay. And, that's how life went on. I remember started working for this guy, and he said to me, listen, you're smoking too much weed. That's your problem. I must come to a meeting with them. And I remember going to my first NA meeting in Cape Town, and I sat there and I felt completely out of sorts. I thought, no way, I'm not like anybody of these people here. I mean, the guy that I went to the meeting with, he was a mess, because, I would sell him drugs on the weekend, and then he would take me to NA meetings during the week, and I was like, it didn't make sense to me, so I just thought, you know what, this is not for me, and so I carried on, I went to a few, and was in the center of Cape Town, so you could buy drugs everywhere around the meeting, and I was like, you know what, this is not good, this is not for me. So I carried on, My grandmother had passed away, and she had left me some inheritance, and I didn't really know that she had left me some. And then one day someone said to me, you need a bank account, I want to send you some money. And so I'm like, all right, cool, I mean, I was living in one shithole to another at that time, I remember, waking up one morning from a bender, and I saw my bank account, and I had 170,000 rand in my bank account. And I was like, oh yeah. I phoned my friend, and I said, listen, got some money, and you want to do something. And he goes, yeah, I remember I decided I bought a lounge suite. I bought a scooter. I paid rent for 6 months. And please understand, I was living in a shithole that when it rained, the water would run down the wall and rot all the skirting boards. But I was living in camp space, so I was okay. So I thought things were, I was good. I met this girl. That was a disaster. By the time I'd been dumped so many times by normal people, I decided I hooked up with this girl one night at a swingers party, and I decided that this was the one. I was going to fix her. She used too much drugs and alcohol, and I was going to help her. I couldn't even help myself, but in my brain, this is what my goal was in life, and it was a disaster. It was a complete and utter mess, Yeah, and I got all this money, and I just thought, that's it, now I can sort everything out. I blew, I think, about 60% of that money within 6 months on drugs and alcohol. What my grandmother gave me nearly killed me. There's a lot of blank spots in my life, and I mean those few months were really bad. I got involved. I was using every type of drug. I was drinking non-stop. And one morning, I used to land up in these violent blackouts, and I remember one morning I woke up after I told this girl that she needs to get rehab and she needs to get out of my life because she's actually bringing me down. And and she says, you know what, I'm not going to rehab. So I said, you know what, fine, I will. And I remember waking up, and I distinctly remember this because I got out of bed one morning and I just wanted it all to stop. I wanted to die. And I actually prayed. I remember dropping on my knees. I never had a problem with the concept of a higher power. I grew up, I'm not going to say religious background. My dad was part of a cult, it was so, but it wasn't one of those, let's go out and drink blood kind of thing. But it was like a very religious-based cult, but it just was very different. But the concept of a higher power was always installed into me and I think my gran, it was okay. So I remember dropping to my knees and I remember praying, God, I can't do this anymore. I just want to die. Please, I don't want to wake up anymore. And if you can't grant me that, just give me something. Just something to change this way of life, because I had had enough. And that was, I don't know what day it was, but I remember I think that afternoon or the next morning, I had spoken to somebody. When they talk about that golden thread, I had spoken to someone who was friends with Keith, and I'd gone to go meet him, and he had phoned Keith and spoken to me and told me that there was hope. He told me a little bit about his life story, and I thought, you know what, if you can get clean, I can get clean. And that's how it all started for me. It took me a little while to get into rehab. It took me, I think, about a month. But in that time, I had, about a little bit of my inheritance left. And Yeah, I wrapped up, I packed up my house. I remember coming home to that girl and I said, that's it, I'm out of here, I'm going to rehab. She goes, no, you're not. I said, okay, cool. I said, the movers will be here in an hour. They're going to pack up whatever. You can keep the bed, the dishes. I went to the landlord. I said, there we go, there's money for the next 3 months. I said, I'm leaving her. She's coming with the flat. Good luck. and I packed up what little I had, and I left. I went to a friend's house, still not quite knowing what to do. I mean, I had no idea that what treatment was. I had no idea about this program. So, I mean, I sat at my friend's house, and I booked a ticket to come to Durban, and I drank at his house for 3 days. I think I was doing about a bottle of vodka a day, and I thought, there we go, smoked a little doobie, and I came, and no idea. At that point, I was running on blind faith because, I had nothing else. I had nothing else. I remember getting picked up at the airport, Rob there, and driving through here. I remember waking up and I was in the middle of these mountains and it looked like a township, and I was like, oh, what's going on here? And shacks everywhere, and I'm like, no. And I remember passing out again, waking up and coming up, and I'm outside this massive, beautiful house, and it was. I like to call it my rebirth because that's exactly what it was for me. Because the person I was before this program would be dead, and the person I am now, I had no idea could ever be possible. I started my steps, and step 1, 2, and 3 were. I remember being the most amazing moments of my life because I didn't think it was possible, I had, like I said, the higher power stuff was not a problem for me. Handing my life over to a power greater than myself was, I'd done that already, So it was all okay, and then it got to step 4. And I was like, no, wait a minute. This is not so cool anymore. And I remember getting into a concern. I was actually listening to a share this morning, and they spoke about, how people love you, and they, when you do something wrong, they tell people you've done something wrong, and they let it know. And I was told, you've got to get on with it, and I did. I think the 12 steps were maybe, I think, the first thing I ever completed. I'd never completed anything else, and I did it sober, and I was like, wow, once I'd finished my program, they asked, what you're going to do, and that was something I hadn't thought of. I had no idea what I was going to do. I said I'll probably go back to Cape Town, stay on my friend's couch for a while, get a job. And it was like, does your friend drink? Yeah, his wife runs a wine farm, but I'm not going to drink anymore. Thank God I didn't go back, because this halfway house that we had up here was a girls' only halfway house, and there were 4 of us all finishing our program, and it was amazing. I had this, my gang, and we all moved into the halfway house at the same time, and hey, we took over Scotland. It was amazing, fellowshipping. My first year of this program was the best year of my life. It was fellowshipping every day. I think sometimes we would, and there weren't that many meetings. I remember, I think on a Friday, sometimes we did 3 meetings. This one, Craigieburn, and then flew through to Durban. And that's what it was about. We'll have meetings at the beach, and life was awesome. And then I started working, and then I realized that not everybody had a program. And I remember my first argument was with somebody was with my manager, and she called me a lot of names, and I was like, wow, I work a program now, how dare you talk to me like that? And I landed up getting into an argument, and I had to go make amends. And as much as I didn't want to do that, my sponsor told me I had to, so I did, and it was heavy, you know. And I'm like, but the feeling I got from that relief of making amends was pretty awesome, and I remember that. You would think you would not go and get into arguments with this lady again, but I did, and I had to make amends again. I think, yeah, I had to do that 2 or 3 times, and it's so weird. That lady landed up messaging this morning, you know, and I was thinking about all this. Yeah, so yeah, life was good, you know, life was easy, and about a year in the halfway house, I landed up getting into a relationship. It started off as a little bit of a dishonesty, because you know what, as much as I work this program, I'm not perfect, and I made mistakes, but what I like to say is I learn from my mistakes. I'm not saying I don't do them again, but I learn, you know, and something I've learned about me is I learn through pain, you know, so yeah, so I did some silly things, but one thing I did do was I kept coming back. I kept owning my stuff. If I did something wrong, I owned it, and I tried my best to not do it again. And that's what I did. I worked my program to the best of my ability every day. You know what? And yeah, to that, I'm still standing here today. So, you know, it just goes to show that this program does work. Yeah, I got into a relationship and eventually I moved out of the halfway house after a year. And I met my wife, and things went a little quick in the beginning. They say you should wait a year before getting into a relationship. They say that for a good reason. I recommend 2 years, because what I discovered was I've got defects, you know, and they really come out in relationships. Because what I did is I took my program and I made it second, and I made my girlfriend, now my wife, my higher power. And as things go, because life carries on, you know, that honeymoon phase fades out. Much to my disappointment, it does fade out, and you know, the things that were okay in the beginning become not okay, and a lot of fights happened. By this time, it was about, I suppose, a year and a half into a relationship. Yeah, Candace she's got a daughter from her previous relationship, and Chloe came to live with us. And let me tell you, wow, that took my life into another direction. Hey, I could barely look after myself before coming into these rooms. And then I came into, you know, living life clean, and I could look after myself. And then I got into a relationship, and then I had to struggle with that. Now I had a little girl that I had to be a parental guidance to this child. And wow, that was maybe one of the most amazing things I'd ever done at that time, but also easily one of the most difficult. Parenting is not for sissies, that's for sure. And you know, it was a bit of a ride, you know, and things did get better, you know. Yeah, I recently celebrated my 5-year anniversary. You know, we got married, and you know, it was the most amazing day of my life. You know, I'd married my best friend, and I had this family, and you know, it's due to this program and having a higher power and having friends, and because my life is full nowadays, you know, it really is busy, and it's busy with fellowshipping, you know, it's constantly, you know, where life was a drag, it's like I'm happy, joyous, and free. You know, even on the rough days, I'm happy, joyous, and free, and you know, I'm very grateful. Yeah, a few years ago, we decided to have another baby, and yeah, a little boy now. Not something I would do again either, because parenting's hard, man. It's like, I've discovered I am selfish, you know, I am. You know, I like things done my way, and when you have a family, it's not done your way. It's done everybody else's way, and you fit in. And that's what I've had to realize, you know. I'm not God. As much as like, you know, I suppose it's like the way my father raised me was like with like an iron fist almost. Yeah, it was hectic. Yeah, I discovered I was adopted when I was about 16 years old, and I based my whole addiction and the reason for me using on the fact that my parents had lied to me and I was adopted. I mean, and that was my reasoning for being the way I was. And I mean, it came into treatment that, you know, I remember doing my life story and realizing what a chop I'd been my whole life. And, you know, all I wanted to do was not be like my father, you know. And yeah, I quickly realized that I could easily slip into that category and being a hard man and not being as lovable as I can be because of things not going my way. And I realized that my sponsors recently pointed out I'm not God. As much as I want to control the lives of my kids because they need to listen to me, everybody's on their own journey. And I think that's maybe been the most recent struggle I've had, that I've had to accept that everybody's on their own journey, even my children. And only thing I can do is guide them and try and practice this program to the best of my ability, and they can see, I can teach them by example. And that's something that I've been really working on for the last, year and a bit, because, an 11-year-old little girl, and now they've got this thing, they call it preteens, and so it's before becoming a teenager. So you have a double whammy for the next few years, and wow, it's hectic. It really is hectic, and then I've got a 3-year-old that has temper tantrums, and I'm like, come on. My father dealt with everything with just lashing out, You looked at your mother in a funny way, you would get a smack, You looked at your mother in a funny way, she would hit you with wooden spoons. And they say you shouldn't do that anymore. I married into a most loving family, and I never had been accepted anywhere. And my in-laws really, I think they love me. It's as much as I make mess ups, and I mean, it's awesome to be accepted. And I keep on getting these little things that say, you shouldn't beat your children, and you shouldn't do this. So eventually I'm raising my kids according to Facebook, and, what I try and keep out of that is like, I got to show love, and this program has given me the ability to show love. Genuine, honest, from the bottom of my heart love. And I'm extremely grateful. I just want to, I hope, that's all I'm going to have to say, because I just hope someone got something out of that, because I prayed to just have some kind of guidance today, and I'm feeling like I've just jabbered a little bit now. So thanks for letting me share. Thanks.